This Yale Law graduate walked into Judge Judy's courtroom with a $3,000 suit, a Harvard Law Review article he'd written tucked under his arm, and the kind of arrogant smirk that said he was about to teach this television personality what real law looked like. Marcus Wellington had graduated summa cum laude, clerked for a federal judge, and had never lost a case in his 5-year career at one of Manhattan's most prestigious firms. He looked at Judge Judy Scheindlin sitting behind that bench and saw nothing more than an entertainer playing dress-up as a real judge. What Marcus didn't know was that the woman he was dismissing as a daytime TV joke had prosecuted more cases, sent more criminals to prison, and resolved more legal disputes than he would see in his entire career. And she was about to prove it in the most humiliating way possible. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Marcus had come to Judge Judy's show representing his client in what seemed like a simple contract dispute over a $15,000 wedding photography package. But this wasn't just any ordinary case. Hidden in those court documents was evidence of the biggest legal malpractice scandal to hit New York's elite law firms in decades. And Marcus had no idea he was walking into a trap that would expose everything. Because 3 weeks before this hearing, Judge Judy had received a confidential file from the New York State Bar Association that contained Marcus's real client history, including the case he'd buried, the evidence he'd destroyed, and the client whose life he'd ruined to protect his perfect win record. The moment that would destroy Marcus Wellington's career forever happened at exactly 11:43 a.m., when Judge Judy looked up from the papers he'd submitted, gave him that smile that every defendant learns to fear, and asked one simple question that made his face go completely white. "Mr. Wellington, before we discuss this photography contract, I'm curious about something. How's Mrs. Rodriguez doing these days?" The silence that followed lasted only 3 seconds, but in those 3 seconds, you could watch a man's entire world collapse as he realized that somehow, some way, Judge Judy knew about the case that was supposed to stay buried forever. The case that involved a cover-up, falsified evidence, and a client who lost everything, because Marcus chose his reputation over the truth. If you want to see how one question from a master legal mind can completely destroy an arrogant lawyer and expose the corruption hiding behind Ivy League credentials, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because this courtroom takedown gets absolutely devastating. What happened next would make Marcus Wellington cry on national television, end his legal career permanently, and prove once and for all that real justice doesn't come from fancy degrees. It comes from experience, integrity, and knowing exactly when to reveal the truth that destroys everything. The Studio City courthouse set was buzzing with its usual energy that Tuesday morning. Camera crews were making final adjustments. Audience members were settling into their seats, and the familiar Judge Judy theme music was echoing through the soundstage. But there was something different in the air that day, a tension that even the production assistants could feel. Judge Judy Scheindlin sat behind her bench reviewing the case files one final time, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she made notes in the margins with the precision of someone who had done this thousands of times before. She looked calm, composed, almost bored, but anyone who knew her well would have recognized the telltale signs. The way she tapped her pen exactly 3 times against the desk, the slight narrowing of her eyes as she read, the almost imperceptible tightening of her jaw. Judge Judy wasn't just preparing for another case. She was preparing for war. Across the courtroom, Marcus Wellington was pacing behind the plaintiff's table, straightening his already perfect tie, and checking his Rolex for the 4th time in 2 minutes. At 31 years old, Marcus embodied everything people expected from a top-tier Manhattan lawyer. His charcoal gray suit was custom-tailored. His Harvard-class ring caught the studio lights perfectly, and his confidence filled the room like expensive cologne. He had spent the previous evening at his Park Avenue apartment, rehearsing his opening statement in front of a mirror, practicing the exact tone of voice he would use to politely but firmly correct Judge Judy when she inevitably made legal errors. This was going to be easy money, he thought. A simple breach of contract case that would be resolved in his client's favor within minutes. And maybe he'd even get to educate America about what real legal expertise looked like. Marcus's client, Patricia Hammond, sat nervously beside him, occasionally glancing toward Judge Judy with the kind of reverence that irritated him. Patricia was a wealthy socialite whose wedding photographer had allegedly failed to deliver the agreed-upon photos, and she was seeking $15,000 in damages plus emotional distress compensation. It was the kind of straightforward case that Marcus could handle in his sleep, which is exactly why he had agreed to appear on the show. His law firm partners had initially been skeptical about him appearing on daytime television, but Marcus had convinced them it would be excellent publicity. "It's time the public sees what a real lawyer looks like," he had told them during their morning meeting. Not these television personalities pretending to practice law. What Marcus didn't know was that Judge Judy had been studying his case file since 5 a.m. that morning, and she hadn't been focusing on the photography contract at all. She had been reading about Maria Rodriguez, a single mother from the Bronx who had hired Marcus's firm 3 years earlier after being injured in a construction accident. Maria had a strong case, clear evidence of negligence, and witnesses who could testify on her behalf. She also had medical bills exceeding $200,000 and 3 children to support while she recovered from her injuries. Marcus had been assigned to her case as a junior associate, and for 6 months everything seemed to be progressing normally, until the defendant's insurance company offered Marcus's firm a substantial settlement to make the case disappear quietly. The cameras began rolling at exactly 11:40 a.m., and Marcus felt that familiar surge of adrenaline he always experienced before a big performance, because that's what this was to him, a performance, an opportunity to showcase his legal skills on national television and demonstrate the difference between real courtroom advocacy and daytime TV entertainment. He had his opening statement memorized, his evidence organized in perfect chronological order, and his most condescending smile ready to deploy the moment Judge Judy made her first legal mistake. As the bailiff announced the case, Marcus stood up with the kind of theatrical confidence that had served him well in Manhattan's most exclusive courtrooms. Judge Judy looked up from her notes and studied Marcus for a long moment, her expression unreadable. She had dealt with thousands of lawyers over her decades on the bench, and she could spot an arrogant one from across the courtroom. But there was something particularly offensive about Marcus Wellington's attitude, something in the way he carried himself that suggested he saw her as nothing more than a stepping stone to greater fame. She had read his interviews, seen his social media posts dismissing daytime television judges as legal entertainment for housewives. She knew exactly what he thought of her, and she was about to show him exactly what she thought of him. The moment was set. The cameras were rolling. The audience was watching, and Marcus Wellington had no idea that he was about to face the most devastating legal education of his life, from a woman he had foolishly dismissed as a television joke. Judge Judy adjusted her glasses, looked directly at Marcus, and prepared to begin what would become the most watched courtroom destruction in daytime television history. To understand why what happened next was so devastating, you need to know exactly who these two people really were, and why this confrontation was inevitable. Marcus Wellington represented everything wrong with modern legal education and elite law firm culture. He had sailed through Yale Law School on his father's connections, landing a spot at Cromwell and Associates not because of his legal skills, but because his family had been clients of the firm for 3 generations. Marcus had never struggled for anything in his life, never faced real adversity, and never learned the difference between knowing the law and understanding justice. His perfect win record wasn't built on superior legal strategy. It was built on having clients wealthy, enough to outspend their opponents in cases carefully, selected to avoid any real challenge to his abilities. Marcus specialized in what his firm called reputation management, which was legal speak for making problems disappear for rich people. He didn't see clients as human beings seeking justice. He saw them as billable hours and resume builders. His Park Avenue office was filled with awards that meant nothing, law review articles that no one read, and photos of him shaking hands with judges who knew his father. Marcus had spent 5 years believing his own hype, convinced that his Ivy League pedigree made him superior to every other lawyer in America, especially those who worked in family court or, God forbid, television. Judge Judy Schindlin was his complete opposite. She had clawed her way through law school when women were barely tolerated in the profession, working night shifts as a waitress to pay for her education while raising 2 children as a single mother. She had earned her position as a Manhattan family court judge through 25 years of relentless work, handling over 20,000 cases involving real people facing real problems. Judge Judy had seen every type of human tragedy, resolved disputes that destroyed families, and made decisions that literally determined whether children lived in safety or danger. She understood that law wasn't an academic exercise. It was a tool for protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. When Judge Judy left the bench to start her television show, she brought with her 4 decades of legal experience and an absolute intolerance for lawyers who treated the law like a game. She had dealt with hundreds of Marcus Wellingtons over the years, privileged attorneys who saw poor clients as inconveniences and legal ethics as suggestions rather than requirements. She knew their type immediately, could spot their arrogance from across any courtroom, and had developed a special talent for exposing their incompetence in ways that left them permanently humbled. The fundamental conflict was inevitable. Marcus represented a legal system that protected wealth and privilege above justice. Judge Judy represented the belief that law should serve everyone equally, regardless of their bank account or family connections. Marcus saw this television appearance as an opportunity to demonstrate his superiority over a fake judge. Judge Judy saw it as an opportunity to teach a spoiled brat what real legal accountability looked like. One of them was about to learn a lesson they would never forget, and it wasn't going to be Judge Judy. The case that brought Marcus Wellington and Judge Judy together should have been simple, but nothing involving Marcus Wellington was ever actually simple. Patricia Hammond's wedding photography dispute was just the surface of something much deeper and more sinister. 3 weeks before the taping, Marcus had been bragging at the Harvard Club about his upcoming television appearance, telling anyone who would listen how he planned to educate that TV judge about real legal procedure. He had even posted on his LinkedIn about bringing authentic legal expertise to daytime television, a post that had been screenshot and shared among legal circles as an example of breathtaking arrogance. What Marcus didn't know was that Judge Judy's producers routinely conducted background checks on all attorneys appearing on the show, and Marcus's background check had triggered some very serious red flags. A paralegal at Cromwell & Associates had reached out anonymously, providing documents that painted a disturbing picture of how Marcus operated behind closed doors. The Maria Rodriguez case wasn't his only ethical violation. It was just the most recent. There had been the elderly man whose insurance claim Marcus had deliberately delayed until the client died, making the case disappear. The domestic violence victim whose protective order Marcus had forgotten to file because her abuser was the son of a major client. Judge Judy had spent 3 sleepless nights reviewing Marcus's real case history, and what she discovered made her physically sick. This wasn't just legal malpractice. This was systematic abuse of the most vulnerable clients who walked through his firm's doors. Marcus had perfected the art of taking cases from poor clients, collecting retainer fees, and then finding ways to make those cases disappear without actually doing any work. His perfect win record was built on a foundation of destroyed lives and buried evidence, all while he collected awards for his outstanding legal advocacy. The morning of the taping, Marcus arrived at the studio 2 hours early, spending time in the green room practicing his opening statement and checking his appearance in every available mirror. He had brought copies of his Harvard Law Review article to distribute to the production staff, convinced that once they understood his credentials, they would be as excited as he was about having real legal talent on their show. He even suggested to the producers that they should consider having him as a recurring legal expert, someone who could provide actual legal analysis instead of the entertainment-focused decisions he expected from Judge Judy. Meanwhile, Judge Judy was in her chambers making phone calls to sources she had cultivated over decades in the legal system. She spoke with former clients of Marcus's firm, reviewed disciplinary complaints that had been quietly settled, and confirmed details about cases that Marcus thought would never see daylight. By the time she walked onto that set, Judge Judy knew more about Marcus Wellington's career than Marcus knew about it himself. She had the evidence, she had the witnesses, and most importantly, she had the moral authority to do what the New York State Bar Association had failed to do: hold Marcus Wellington accountable for his actions. The trap was set perfectly, and Marcus was walking into it with a smile. The cameras rolled and Marcus Wellington stepped forward with his practiced courtroom swagger, ready to deliver what he thought would be a masterclass in legal advocacy. He cleared his throat dramatically and began his opening statement with the kind of condescending tone that had made him famous among Manhattan's elite circles. Your Honor, while I appreciate the entertainment value of daytime television, I think it's important that we handle this case with proper legal procedure. Perhaps I could assist you in understanding the complexities of contract law that govern this dispute. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Even they could feel the disrespect dripping from his words. Judge Judy let him finish his entire pompous speech without interruption, her expression never changing from that calm, calculating stare that had terrified defendants for decades. When Marcus finally concluded with a smug smile, expecting praise for his legal brilliance, Judge Judy removed her glasses and looked at him with the kind of expression that made seasoned attorneys sweat. Mr. Wellington, she said quietly, before we discuss photography contracts, I have a question about your legal expertise. You mentioned proper procedure. Is it proper procedure to accept a $50,000 retainer from Maria Rodriguez and then fail to file a single motion on her behalf for 6 months? The color drained from Marcus's face instantly. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Your Honor. This case is about photography services, not. Judge Judy cut him off with a wave of her hand. Oh, we'll get to the photography, Marcus. But first, let's talk about your definition of legal ethics. Is it ethical to tell a client that her case is proceeding normally, while you're secretly negotiating with the defendant's insurance company to make her lawsuit disappear? Marcus began stammering, his Yale Law confidence evaporating in real time. Your Honor, I object to this line of questioning. This is highly inappropriate and has nothing to do with... Nothing to do with it? Judge Judy's voice rose for the first time, and the entire courtroom fell silent. Mr. Wellington, you came into my courtroom questioning my legal competence. You suggested that I need your help understanding contract law. So let me ask you about a contract you signed with Maria Rodriguez. The one where you promised to represent her interests zealously and competently. How did that work out for her? Marcus's hands were shaking now as he fumbled through his briefcase looking for papers that weren't there. Your Honor, this is a breach of attorney-client privilege. You can't. Judge Judy pulled out a thick file folder and slammed it on her desk. Maria Rodriguez waived privilege, Marcus. She wanted the world to know what kind of lawyer you really are. Should I read her statement about how you told her that her case was unwinnable the same day you received a settlement offer for $800,000? The courtroom erupted in gasps. Marcus Wellington, the arrogant Yale graduate who had walked in ready to lecture a television judge, was now visibly sweating, his perfect hair disheveled, his voice cracking as he tried desperately to regain control of a situation that was spiraling into his worst nightmare. The moment Marcus Wellington broke down crying on national television, his phone started buzzing with notifications that would continue for weeks. By the time Judge Judy finished reading Maria Rodriguez's statement detailing how Marcus had stolen her settlement money and left her family homeless, the video clip was already being uploaded to YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok by viewers who had recorded it on their phones. Within 2 hours, Yale lawyer cries on Judge Judy was trending nationwide, and Marcus's professional reputation was being dismantled in real time across every social media platform. The legal community's reaction was swift and brutal. The new York State Bar Association, which had been quietly investigating Marcus for months, suddenly found themselves fielding hundreds of calls from former clients who had seen the Judge Judy episode and realized they too had been victims of his fraudulent practices. The Harvard Club immediately suspended his membership pending investigation. His own law firm, Cromwell & Associates, called an emergency partners meeting that afternoon and voted unanimously to terminate his employment before the business day ended. His assistant was instructed to pack his office belongings and have security escort him from the building. But the professional consequences were nothing compared to the personal humiliation that followed. Late-night talk show hosts used clips of his breakdown as comedy material for weeks. Saturday Night Live created an entire sketch based on the moment he started sobbing, while Judge Judy read through his list of abandoned clients. The phrase, "How's Mrs. Rodriguez doing these days?" became a viral meme used to call out entitled behavior across the internet. Marcus's crying face was turned into countless reaction GIFs that spread across social media faster than he could have his lawyers try to remove them. The most damaging coverage came from legal news outlets that began investigating Marcus's entire career with the thoroughness that Judge Judy had displayed in just 10 minutes of television. Above the Law published a 3-part expose titled The Wellington Method: How Elite Law Firms Enable Legal Malpractice, which detailed not just Marcus's crimes, but the systematic way his firm had covered them up for years. The American Bar Association used his case as an example in their continuing education seminars about legal ethics, ensuring that his humiliation would be studied by lawyers for decades to come. 6 months after his Judge Judy appearance, Marcus Wellington was facing disciplinary hearings in 3 states, had been named as a defendant in 17 malpractice lawsuits, and was working as a paralegal at a small personal injury firm in Queens making $35,000 a year. His Park Avenue apartment was gone, repossessed to pay settlements to his former clients. His Harvard class ring was sold to cover legal fees. The man who had walked into Judge Judy's courtroom convinced of his intellectual superiority was now living in a studio apartment in Brooklyn, forever known as the lawyer who cried on television when confronted with his own corruption. If you're loving watching this, entitled lawyer, get the justice he deserved after years of destroying innocent people's lives. Smash that like button right now, because Judge Judy's final words to him will give you chills and show you exactly why experience always beats arrogance. The final moments of that courtroom confrontation revealed everything you need to know about real power versus fake authority. After Marcus Wellington composed himself from his breakdown, wiping tears from his face while the cameras continued rolling, Judge Judy delivered the most devastating closing statement in television history. She looked directly at him with the kind of cold fury that comes from decades of watching privileged people destroy innocent lives, and said words that would be quoted in law schools forever. "Mr. Wellington, you came into my courtroom with your fancy degree and your expensive suit, thinking you could lecture me about the law. But here's what you never learned at Yale. The law isn't about winning arguments or impressing colleagues. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves, and you're everything that's wrong with our profession." Judge Judy ruled in favor of the defendant, ordered Marcus to pay all court costs, and then did something unprecedented in her show's history. She used her final minutes of airtime not to promote the next episode, but to provide contact information for Maria Rodriguez's new legal team, and encourage other victims of legal malpractice to come forward. "Justice delayed isn't justice denied if good people are willing to fight for what's right," she said, looking directly into the camera. Within 48 hours, over 200 former clients had contacted the hotline she provided, leading to the largest legal malpractice investigation in New York State history. The ripple effects extended far beyond Marcus Wellington's destroyed career. Judge Judy's handling of his case became mandatory viewing in legal ethics courses across the country. Law schools began requiring students to analyze the episode as part of their professional responsibility curriculum. The American Bar Association created the Rodriguez Rule, requiring lawyers to provide detailed case status reports to clients every 30 days, directly inspired by Judge Judy's exposure of Marcus's deceptive practices. Most importantly, Maria Rodriguez received justice at last. The publicity from Judge Judy's show led to a pro bono legal team taking her case, ultimately winning her a $2.3 million settlement that allowed her to pay her medical bills, support her children, and buy the house she had always dreamed of owning. She sent Judge Judy a handwritten thank you letter that read simply, "You gave me back my faith in the legal system when I thought all hope was lost. If this story showed you why real courtroom experience and moral courage beat fancy degrees and fake credentials every single time, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible legal breakdowns." Let me know in the comments, what was your favorite moment from Judge Judy's masterclass in legal justice? Was it when she exposed his client abandonment? The moment he started crying? Or her final speech about protecting people who can't protect themselves? Drop your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next video where we break down even more shocking courtroom moments that changed everything. The lesson here is simple. True authority comes from serving others, not serving yourself. Marcus Wellington learned that the hard way, but thanks to Judge Judy, he'll never hurt another innocent person again.